Hey everyone, with Dine Sports, and welcome to our breakdown of UFC 308, Topuria versus Holloway. We got a very good card coming to you live this weekend from the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi. A bit of an early start for this pay-per-view event, but certainly worth waking up for. Going to be some awesome fights, and looking forward to breaking them down with you as always. Nick, how you feeling about this card?
Awesome card, man. Yeah, they do not hold any punches, no pun intended. Saudi cards. This one's stacked. I mean, the main card is tremendous. Two really fun fights. Really interesting fight in the feature bout at light heavyweight. I mean, some of the prelims, I don't know. The name value isn't necessarily there, but it's pretty much all action from what I can gather. So really looking forward to it. Just those tuned in. Just keep in mind this card does lock early. I think it's noon that the prelims are going to start Eastern Standard Time. But really fun one, man, and one of the best fights the UFC can put together in this main event.
Yep, and prelims starting 10 a.m. on the East Coast. Main card at 2 p.m. Is when the main card will begin. The main card ending with the featherweight main event. The undefeated Ilia Topuria putting his title on the line against challenger Max Holloway. This is a super interesting fight. I'm very excited to watch these two throw down in the octagon. Topuria, pretty sizable betting favorite here, minus 250 over Holloway, who could be had at 2 to 1. Certainly, it's a good price to get Holloway coming off that insane performance in the BMF title fight, knocking out Justin Gaethje in round five. But and more than that, more than the last second knockout, he was winning every round of that fight. He looked great up at lightweight. Um, Holloway obviously now cutting back down to featherweight. Certainly want to see how this weight cut plays out for him, but looking good so far this week. And yeah, it's a fight here that I think he really could find sustained success against Ilia. Oftentimes we find Ilia, moving forward, pressuring guys heavily, and finding that knockout punch. Just when it comes to Holloway, if that knockout doesn't materialize, and over the course of his career, it hasn't, this is very likely a fight that will end up going to the judges' scorecards, and a decision could easily go to Topuria in this spot. I just find myself favoring Max. Like if you tell me this fight is going to go the distance, I would favor Max in that realm. He's going to be outlanding Topuria when it comes to the numbers each round, and the volume that he puts out, the high boxing pressure, mixing it up to the head, to the body. He always mixes in a good couple clean quality strikes in every combination. And while Topuria is going to be landing the bigger strikes overall from round to round, I certainly could see Holloway's volume winning out as this gets into the third and the fourth and the fifth. Um, Obviously, it's hard to entirely know Topuria's ceiling, but to this point, he's looked incredible everywhere. He has a jiu-jitsu black belt. He hasn't really showcased at all. It's been his hands, his crisp boxing, and his awesome timing that's been getting him the job done. Yeah, it's a really tough fight for me. I have this funny feeling that Topuria is going to retain and find a way to beat Max. But yeah, just getting this number on Max Holloway, a fight that it's favored it won't go the distance, but it's only plus 120 that we do get to the judges' scorecards. The value is on the Holloway side, in my opinion. He's a more proven guy, and certainly coming down from lightweight, having success in a lightweight title fight, one would think he does fare well here against a featherweight. So it's a very tough one for me. I was leaning Topuria a bit early week, but right now I'm thinking Holloway.
Yeah, I mean it's super tough, right? I can't remember the last time I faded Max Holloway in a fight. I mean, I've picked him against both time and time again. Obviously, that didn't work out, but against pretty much everyone else, he's been winning over the past few years. Looked tremendous in that Gaethje fight where we were both on him as an underdog. But you bring up the weight cut, and I do think that could be a bit of a factor here. That fight with Gaethje coming up at 155 pounds. Max looks solid, more power than usual, super durable. I mean, cardio is never really an issue with him. Neither is durability, really. But I am curious to see what he looks like on the scales. Topuria, I mean, we were super high on him when he came into the promotion. I don't know that we necessarily thought he was going to flatline Volk the way he did. But this guy has crazy power. I mean, insane. Certainly a very skilled technical boxer. I mean, probably if we're talking just pure boxing, similar level to a Holloway, but we did see Holloway kind of mixing in those spinning back kicks against Gaethje. He does have a decent kicking game, does a good job kind of using that to reset and pivot away from his opponent's strengths. But yeah, I mean, looking statistically, both these guys, tremendous defensive strikers. Topuria, 65%. He's defending strikes thrown against him to Holloway 60. Holloway is going to put out more volume, but Topuria at the same time, definitely going to have a power advantage. It's interesting too, though. Obviously, Max a taller fighter here, but these guys both listed with the 69-inch reach. So not a huge reach advantage for Topuria, at least not in terms of punching. But yeah, man, I'm having the same issues as you. Like, if you think about it, Holloway, if this goes to decision, should probably be able to win on volume. But Topuria does average just under 2 takedowns per 15 minutes in the UFC. Holloway has great takedown defense, but it's not impossible to take this guy down. And if these guys are in lengthy striking exchanges, just kind of knowing that is going to kind of level the technical, I don't know, gap between these two. Also, just knowing that Topuria can kind of secure close rounds if he's able to shoot for takedowns late and maybe secure them. It's tough. And as someone who never fades Max, one of his biggest fans probably, I'm having trouble here in a big, big way. I think looking at the number, the value side on the money line is probably Holloway, but the same exact thing that you said is what I'm going to say. I kind of have this gut feeling that Topuria gets it done either by winning the first 3 rounds and just kind of hanging on for the last 2, or maybe finishing Max for the first time ever. I don't necessarily think we see that here. But this guy's brutal, man. What he did to Josh Emmett and Emmett survived is absolutely insane. I mean, he has ground and pound, he has submission ability. So yeah, I just think at this point in their respective careers, the age gap isn't all that wide. But we've just seen Max for so many years go through so many of these wars. At some point, the chin has to crack. Like it's almost nobody that goes their entire career without being KO'd, at least as far as strikers go. Even Dober, who was known for his chin, we saw go down the past year. I mean, if Ferreira has been knocked out before, Adesanya, all these elite strikers, we do see them go down at times, and it's always shocking when it happens. But I don't know, for Max, is he going to go forever? I mean, this is the test, I think, in terms of power. I don't know that there's anyone else really in this division with the power of a Topuria. Right now, my lean's on Topuria, but at the price, I don't feel great about it. I'm going to keep kind of watching weigh-ins, watching media. Obviously, both these guys supremely confident. Max always says all the right things. Ilia, funny, talks his shit, but at the same time, he is respectful enough. I think he does respect the opponent that he's going to see here. And I mean, he called the shot against Volk. I mean, this is a guy who's been calling shots consistently since he made his way into the UFC. And yeah, super, super confident coming into this one. So I don't know. I think the value's on Max, but if I had to pick right now, it's Ilia. So definitely anyone tuned in, check out the article Saturday morning early. Again, this card locks early. Maybe it'll be out even Friday night, but we need to kind of see weigh-ins and just how things shake out. Values on Max, but for now, I guess my pick's Topuria to retain.
All right, we'll move on now to breaking down the co-main event, a fight at middleweight between Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev. Hopefully, Chimaev does make the walk to the octagon for the event this weekend. The minus 250 favorite against Robert Whittaker. This was a fight we were booked to see prior, but Khamzat Chimaev pulling out, forced to withdraw. And as a result, we got Whittaker against Ikram Aliskerov in what was a quick finish for Whittaker, making it work of another Dagestani. What are your thoughts on this matchup? Which way were you going in the co-main event?
Yeah, so usually when we talk about binary fights, it's like striker versus grappler. I think this is like binary in that it's either early Chimaev or late Whittaker. I'm currently on the Whittaker side and kind of similar to Max. I mean, I'll admit my bias. This is one of my favorite fighters on the roster. But he's locked in right now, man. And I think he knows what he has to do here. Like, he's not going to be looking to finish Khamzat immediately. He's not going to be looking to win the fight in the first or second round. This is a 5-round fight, and I really think that that's going to be the key here. Chimaev's super dangerous early, easily one of the best wrestlers on the roster. But if he is wrestling and he's doing it aggressively, as we saw in the Usman fight, it's not necessarily something he can sustain for 15 minutes, never mind 25. I think one of the most likely outcomes here is that Khamzat takes him down, finds a rear naked choke maybe in the first round. But if he isn't able to, Whittaker is the much better striker, really sound technically, and he does a great job kind of, again, circling away, staying out of danger. That's also a major factor for him here in kind of keeping distance so he isn't taken down. Whittaker obviously hasn't been facing many wrestlers on the level of Chimaev, but 82% takedown defense. I mean, guys like Vettori, who fought him, have not been able to take him down, obviously. Yoel Romero, back when Romero was still in his prime, had issues trying to take him down. I think Chimaev will find the takedowns here, but I don't know that he's going to be able to keep him down. And shouts out to another one of my favorite fighters, Jacob Malkoun, who I'm sure has been heavily involved in this camp. It really is just weathering that early storm and seeing if you can extend this fight. So I think Whittaker's capable of it. But am I going to be surprised if he gets steamrolled in one round? Absolutely not. But Chimaev, I mean, a lot of intangibles to kind of discuss here. He did have a kid going through some medical health issues. I mean, Chimaev, dealing with health issues of his own, was forced to pull out of this fight last time. Seems like he's in the right place, but another guy you really want to see how he looks when he weighs in. But I don't know. He just doesn't really seem to have the same edge that we're used to seeing from him. I don't know if it's just the long layoff, if he's emotionally fatigued, moving around from Sweden to Russia, et cetera, all these different places, maintaining that undefeated record, a guy who used to be super active, who we barely ever see fight anymore. I don't know. It's just like a bit of the aura has kind of maybe come off him. I don't know. Again, I'm probably looking too deeply into that. Regardless, it's just going to come down to whether Whittaker can survive early or not. I'd be shocked if Chimaev won a 5-round decision. I don't know that he's going to be able to put enough on Whittaker for 25 minutes and maintain that cardio. But yeah, super live to finish early. I'm going to side with Rob here in his 82% takedown defense. I think he gets taken down, but I think he has good enough jiu-jitsu to work his way back to his feet enough times to tire Chimaev out and then take over third, fourth, fifth round. Probably find a late finish. Am I confident in this play? No. Again, because if I'm wrong, I'm going to look really stupid because Chimaev's going to steamroll him. But I do have faith in Rob. I still think he has a few big fights left in him. So I'm probably going to back him as an underdog here.
Can't blame me for that one. It's definitely a tough fight, and Whittaker is going to be the value side, like in my eyes. I just am going to side with Chimaev, ultimately getting the win in this one. The one angle I'm going to take is if we see the end of round one in this fight, I'm going to put some money on Whittaker live. Perhaps at an even improved number after, Chimaev is able to secure an early round takedown. It's going to be interesting. Do you take that approach? Do you look for the takedown right away in the early finish, or does he look to maybe conserve his cardio a bit more with the issues that have plagued him in the past? I think he needs to take that aggressive approach. And yeah, I think the 2 outs for Chimaev would be a round one or a round two finish of Robert Whittaker. When you break down these two skill for skill, just on the feet, Whittaker is miles ahead of Chimaev. He's way more comfortable in those prolonged boxing exchanges, especially as the fights go late. We've seen him win decisions plenty of times before. And certainly, yeah, just those combinations from range that Whittaker is able to land over and over again on his opponents. Chimaev is going to be susceptible to take a lot of those shots here. It's not like his defense is anything spectacular. We've seen Chimaev really tuned up, standing and striking before. It's just that decisive edge grappling for Whittaker is really made up for with the same edge for Chimaev on the mat. Yeah, I know you, wanted to applaud Rob for his high takedown defense. But again, you look at the caliber of grappler he's fought over the course of his career. A lot of guys are trying to take down Robert Whittaker. But Chimaev is a guy who's really built his entire game around the takedown, getting on top of guys and looking for that finish. So I think he is going to be able to lock up an early choke here. But yeah, definitely a live look on Robert Whittaker if this does get outside of the first round. All right. We'll look now at a bout at light heavyweight between Magomed Ankalaev and Aleksandar Rakic. Ankalaev, the sizable favorite, minus 400 in this spot against Rakic, who could be had at 3-1. Rakic fared pretty well early in his last fight against Jiri Prochazka. He was really landing a lot of successful leg kicks early. I think his best chance of winning today is going to be following that similar game plan. Jiri went crazy. I mean, round two, he turned it on. He just would not stop moving forward. He forced Rakic to just cover up and look to defend shots late. Ankalaev isn't that style fighter. He's much more steady, conservative, looking to land his strikes when his opponents are open for those shots. He has a very quick left hand. And I think he has the striking to certainly match up well with Rakic. It's just you would think he uses the takedown a bit more to his benefit in this particular matchup. We've seen Rakic grounded before. We've also seen Rakic finished in both of his previous two appearances. it's going to be a tough climb back up for Rakic, but he is still one of the elites at the light heavyweight division. And, I certainly think he vaults his way into the title picture with a win here against Magomed Ankalaev. It's just going to be tough to do so anyway, other than a tough decision. And, that's going to be a tough task in itself here fighting in Saudi Arabia, where, Ankalaev is obviously well received. I think he's going to be able to touch up Rakic for the most part in this fight. And while I would love to see him employ the grappling, just generally with him not earning a title shot yet based on his style, perhaps the uppers are, in his ear and telling him, hey, dude, you need to strike more. You can't be shooting takedowns, making fights boring, just winning minutes, because that's not going to get you that title shot you want. Here against Rakic, I really do feel confident backing Ankalaev, because with his hands, with his power, I think he's going to have the edge over Rakic. We haven't really seen Rakic land that many knockouts since his early days in the UFC. And you can look at the level of competition he was facing then. So I think Ankalaev is solid, way better defensively, and he's going to hold up here in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I do think Ankalaev is the side, and he did actually mention that the UFC talked to him about having to put on a convincing performance here to be awarded that title shot, which I found interesting. Obviously, Pereira is kind of a cash cow for them right now, so they have been protecting him to an extent, specifically from Ankalaev because he does have that massive grappling advantage. When you hear Ankalaev talk and you watch him fight, I mean, he's not really pursuing takedowns all that frequently, averaging just over one takedown per 15 minutes. Going to have a wrestling advantage here, but I do think he is going to be the sharper striker on the feet. Rakic looked good early last time out, but against a very kind of, I don't know, unorthodox striker in Prochazka. He mentioned he was injured. That's why he faded. I don't know if I buy into that very much, but I don't necessarily think it's going to matter here. I mean, Ankalaev, more accurate, really good on the counter. These guys have similar reach. I mean, they can both kick. They're both huge. So there is some volatility in that they're both massive guys with KO power, but at the same time, I just think the better technical striker is Ankalaev. 59% striking defense compared to Rakic's 50, both landing around 4 significant strikes per minute. So just looking at the stats, similar numbers. But again, Ankalaev, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean he won't grapple, that he's talked to kind of the upper brass, but it means if he does shoot for a takedown, he's going to go for that ground and pound. He's going to be super aggressive. I think the only way Rakic wins this is if it is super boring. Like we saw that's win for Ankalaev over Thiago Santos a couple years back. I mean, good portion of that Blachowicz fight, just super tentative point fighting. I think he knows he can't do that here. And yeah, even engaging in kind of a war like that, I do favor him over Rakic. I think he has him covered everywhere. The line does feel a little bit wide because Rakic is no pushover. This guy is not a can or anything, regardless of those 2 losses. I mean, they came to 2 former champions of the division. But I do think Ankalaev's the side here. I think he gets it hesitant to play him inside the distance, but again, with the UFC in his ear, maybe that is a bit more incentive if you're seeing a decent plus number on that. But 2 really skilled fighters, I just think Ankalaev should be able to stay a step ahead.
All right, glad we're with each other on that one. We'll look now at this featherweight matchup between Lerone Murphy and Dan Ige. Murphy, the minus 250 favorite in the spot against Ige, who can be had at 2-1. This is a pretty tough fight. I mean, Ige, obviously, his last time out, saving the day, short notice, and putting on a good performance against Diego Lopez, all things considered, hours notice, stepping into the cage. This is going to be a bit of a tough, certainly a tougher test for him, facing another top 10 featherweight in Lerone Murphy, somebody who is making his climb toward the top, someone, who also does not have a loss on his professional record. I thought his last time out against Edson Barbosa, we were really going to see Lerone Murphy tested, but he passed that test. In the first round, he really put a good beating on Barbosa, and from there on, he was able to control that fight. I was never really impressed with his fighting as a whole, but certainly the resume is starting to look very good for Lerone Murphy. He's somebody who I think is a bit tentative or could do a bit more with the weapons that he does have, but he is a very good overall striker, technically sound and quick to the punch. I think he does have the edge against Ige when these 2 are going to be standing and exchanging on the feet. Obviously, you worry about Ige and his tremendous power, but he is just searching for that knockout. Over the course of a 3-round fight, Murphy should be able to get off the better strikes overall, and I could see him outlanding Ige by a significant margin. He also holds a clear grappling advantage if he does elect to take this fight to the ground, and we have seen Ige in the past, taken to the mat and struggle against upper echelon wrestlers. Not that Murphy is that, but he certainly is a very well-rounded martial artist. And yeah, I think he's the rightful favorite in the spot. If he were to play Ige, it would be by a knockout prop, in my opinion. Certainly live to win by decision, but yeah, I think Murphy should be able to get this done. Keep his unbeaten streak alive.
Yeah, you know me, I like to back Ilia as an underdog pretty often, but I don't think I can get to him here. Obviously, kudos to him for that Lopez fight. We broke that card down, I think. Lopez against Ortega, and then Ortega pulled out. Ige took it on 6 hours' notice. So the rare chance, or the rare instance when we don't have a pick for a fight, for Dines, pretty funny, but he was super competitive. He won that third round, did a good job kind of weaponizing his cardio. But as impressive as that was, I mean, I was really impressed by Murphy's last performance against Barboza. I was on Barboza in that fight. I thought he'd be able to outclass him on the feet, but Murphy's come such a long way. Starting to mix in the takedowns more too, averaging 1.6 per 15 minutes, which I think is a factor here against Ige, who has just that 59% takedown defense. Ige probably has a power advantage, but from everything we've seen, I mean, Murphy definitely really durable. But yeah, man, I mean, unless he gets knocked out for the first time, I don't necessarily know that there's a path for Ige outside of landing the bigger shots, because the volume's definitely on the side of Murphy. Really high strikes landed per minute rate of over 5. Really sound defensively as well, absorbing only 2.6. So I know I'm a little bit deep in the stats here on this one, but I think it tells the story because in a lot of ways, these are similar fighters. Ige does mix in the grappling in certain matchups, but we're much more likely to see that from Murphy here, who I do think is the better wrestler, going to be landing more volume, going to be absorbing less strikes, should have a little bit of a reach advantage, only listed at 2 inches, but I think it's going to look a little bit longer than that. So yeah, Ige's live. He always is. I mean, he has dynamite power for featherweight, but outside of maybe finding the chin of Murphy, I do think Murphy probably gets it done here by decision. Could be a narrow decision. Proceed with some caution, but the line hasn't gotten out of hand on this one as it has with some of the other favorites. So I'm on Murphy here.
All right. The main card, again, beginning 2 p.m. on pay-per-view. It opens with this middleweight matchup between Shara Magomedov and Armen Petrosyan. I'm very excited for this fight. This is going to be an awesome battle between two strikers here. Shara Magomedov now 14-0 as a professional. I know you'll certainly agree. There are some holes in his overall skill set. Certainly some gaps that we need to see corrected before he can ascend the middleweight rankings much higher. But I'm going to be fading him against a high-level grappler, somebody who could really test his cardio. I'm not going to be fading him in a match where he gets to do what he does best, and that's stand and strike. And I think Armen Petrosyan is going to be an opponent that will oblige Magomedov there at kickboxing range. It's going to be largely about contested there and just the speed of Magomedov, what he's able to do with that front leg, what he's able to do with his hands, bringing punches behind his kicks. It just gives him the slightest edge over a guy in Petrosyan who's a bit bigger, a bit stronger, perhaps more single, like one punch power, and perhaps somebody who at range will have a bit more success from Magomedov, just given his long length and longer legs. But yeah, again, the kicks of Magomedov are going to be such a factor in this one. His ability to attack high and then low and then high again and then to the body. Whereas Petrosyan needs to think much more in regards to his attacks. As the strikes are coming one way from him, I think Magomedov is going to be able to land a higher rate. So far in the UFC, more than 6 significant strikes per minute landing for Magomedov, beating out the rate currently for Petrosyan, who, although facing tougher competition and, obviously putting on a good show for himself, just nothing too spectacular from the Petrosyan side, where spectacular is what you're going to get out of Magomedov, whether it's chasing, spinning attacks or flying knees, anything that he can do. And again, I think a lot of the criticism comes from him not just landing those yet. Obviously, it's the attacks that you like to see. And his cardio has looked suspect, but he still hasn't entirely faded in round 3 of any of these fights. So I still feel confident backing him as a small favorite. Probably now as he steams to -200, I'm becoming less interested. But yeah, against a striker, give me Shara Bullet.
Yeah, man. I'm on the other side in this one, and I really like Shara coming into the promotion. Been pretty disappointed though, and this is a guy I've been kind of backing consistently, but against kind of low competition. He just really hasn't looked all that great. Lost the third round against Olajaychuk his last time out clearly. Beat Tricoli, finished him via KO in a fight that was really kind of low volume and ugly. And then he had the fight with Silva where he won, but he was taken down consistently against a guy in Silva who really doesn't have much wrestling ability. I look at Petrosyan's record. I mean, he's only really losing to grapplers in Cal Borello, Rodolfo Vieira. They grappled heavily, obviously, against him in both of those matchups. And he has a similar opponent on his record, and it comes in his last win against a Christian Leroy Duncan. Another guy came into the promotion, super flashy, long, tall striker for the division. Does a good job mixing in his kicks. Petrosyan landing the counters, mixing in grappling. Not a guy who's known to wrestle, but showed in certain matchups he's willing to do so. Both these guys land a lot of volume, but you look at the stats defensively, Shara is defending only 41% of the strikes thrown against him, in spite of the fact he's taking on kind of mediocre competition. Petrosyan, 56% defense. Both these guys land a ton of volume, but yeah, man, I mean, Shara is going to look good. He's going to have his moments, but I don't know that he has the power to put Petrosyan away. I think Petrosyan has the better cardio. I think he could fall back on his grappling. And if you listen to media this week, these guys have sparred before. I think they were in some kickboxing tournament as well when they were much younger. Petrosyan actually won that matchup. Petrosyan seems really confident here, and I know Shara is kind of the guy. I mean, he's got the look, the one eye, terrifying human being. But yeah, I've just been kind of disappointed, and I really wanted to like him. I really wanted to kind of back this guy's to climb the rankings, but the grappling hole is just massive. And for such a talented striker offensively, yes, he has flashy offensive skills, but defensively, I mean, he does leave a lot to be desired. And again, this is the best striker he's faced since he's entered the UFC. I'm going to have to side with Petrosyan here. I was kind of hoping that he'd be an even bigger underdog to get some more value on this line. I do think Shara has a chance. I'm not saying that he's going to be completely outclassed, but I do think the value is on the better overall mixed martial artist in Armen Petrosyan. Wouldn't be shocked to see him mixing the grappling a little bit. And I think he can hang on the feet. I don't think he's going to be outclassed here by much. Petrosyan's looked excellent whenever he's been given the opportunity to strike. So I'm going to back him here as an underdog. Don't blame me for going with Shara. I mean, he's looked good at times, but I don't know. I've just been waiting for the spot. I think this is it.
Yeah, I will wait until he faces an actual grappler. All right, we will look at the prelims now. This a light heavyweight fight between Ibo Aslan and Rafael Cerqueira. Aslan minus 130. These odds flipping. Near pick 'em back and forth, really one way or another. Not much a lot to love in this fight. I mean, these are two bigger, sloppier strikers. What I can say about Ibo is, his last performance, a gritty one, able to come through, find that finish late against Turkalj. Again, not the highest level of competition, but we have at least seen him tested. And the key for me, we've seen his chin tested before. He's able to take shots, and I just can't say the same for this Cerqueira fella. Somebody who's undefeated, coming out of Brazil, but you look at these 11 wins, and it's absolutely nobody that he's been fighting. His striking's good. He's aggressive, getting after people, attacking from the southpaw stance, but really it's just a guy who you haven't seen take an actual punch from somebody with more than 5 wins on their resume. Versus Aslan, I think somebody who's at least training, getting looks constantly, looking to further his career, taking spots on cards like this where he can make his name bigger. And yeah, obviously an impressive record too. One with one loss that may stymie it, but again, a higher level of competition he's faced. And just when you see him in the cage too, somebody who's a tough, imposing presence. And I think just looking at him, going to be able to take more shots than what Cerqueira is, as these two bang it out, exchange punches in the pocket. I think Ibo's going to keep going and slinging a bit more. So he's the slight lean for me in this matchup. Like him at even money.
Yeah, I totally agree. Pretty much everything. I mean, Aslan didn't look great in that debut against Turkali, but he did show a decent chin. I mean, Cerqueira or whatever, fighting for demo fight in Brazil, which is like not even a top 3 promotion down there, really hasn't been taking on a solid level of competition. And with this fight moving up the card, Aslan from Turkey, but definitely has representation in the area. I mean, it seems like they're trying to build him up a little bit here. I don't know how high they could really build this guy, but I mean, he is 6 years younger. He is going to have a slight reach advantage. We've seen him tested against much better opponents. Cerqueira, I mean, he's finding all these early finishes against pretty much nobodies. Don't know what his cardio is going to look like if this fight is extended into the late second or even the third round. So yeah, I don't rate Aslan. I don't think he's all that good, but I think I'd rather go with the devil I know than the devil I don't. So I'm going to back him here as the favorite. Probably gets it done inside the distance. And even if it gets extended, I think the Turkali fight where Turkali was trying to take him down constantly showed he had pretty solid cardio as well. So, I mean, he checks a lot of boxes regardless of whether or not this fight finishes inside the distance. I'm assuming it does. Cerqueira, I mean, he's dangerous. He's going to go for it. I wouldn't want too much on Aslan here, but I do think he's the rightful favorite.
And yeah, again, the graphic I have up on the screen, we're actually seeing plus money now on Aslan. Not sure the entire accuracy of that, but again, as this goes flips one way or the other, it really is a coin flip fight. But yeah, glad we're on the same side there. We'll move on now. This welterweight matchup, Geoff Neal, the minus 300 favorite against Rafael dos Anjos, who could be had plus 240. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Interesting. I mean, Dos Anjos getting up there in years, obviously tremendously skilled, really crisp boxer, really good wrestler, able to out-grapple opponents in most of his wins. But yeah, a career 155er. I mean, we have seen him at 170 a few times before. Most of his success has come down at 155, though. Losing to Luque and then Gamrot his last two times out, obviously guys that are able to grapple. But yeah, Neal, just not an easy guy to take down at 170 pounds. We're looking at a near 90% takedown defense for him. And I think he's going to be the better striker here, going to land more volume. Dos Anjos is going to need to grapple to probably find a way to win this one, likely only on the scorecards given Neal's durability. But up a weight class, and I know it's not technically up a weight class as he's been up here for a while, but I think he's undersized. And I think if Neal was smaller or this was at 155 pounds at this price, RDA would be a really live underdog. But yeah, man, I just think Neal is too big and strong. And while he lost that fight against Gary, he did give a really good showing of himself. Lost that fight against Rakhmonov, who's now fighting for the title, two of the top welterweights in the world. I mean, he's taking on big opponents, really skilled opponents. RDA, as skilled as he is, obviously a former champion. I mean, he just hasn't found all that much success up here. And I mean, he's a guy who we've seen chin checked at times down at 155. So I give the power advantage to Neal here. Grappling advantages with RDA, but I don't think he's really going to be able to lean on it. But if he's not finding takedowns, I think he's going to be outclassed by a little bit on the feet. So should be a good fight, should be competitive, but tough for me not to go Neal here with RDA likely to be considerably undersized.
I think I am going to pull the trigger and go with RDA as the betting underdog in this fight. I think it's a good bet at the price. I'm not necessarily confident that he's going to be able to get the win here against Geoff Neal. I mean, Geoff Neal, two losses in his last two fights. I'm not sure he really warrants a minus 300 price tag. And yeah, it really does break down the stylistic matchup that you have already touched upon. If Dos Anjos is able to secure those takedowns in this fight, his chances improve significantly, and that plus 240 price you're getting on him is just going to be too good for me to pass up on. You mentioned Neal's takedown defense. Well, good. It's not like Rakhmonov really was attempting many takedowns in their meeting. I was yelling at the television for Rakhmonov to shoot takedowns on Geoff Neal, and he was not doing so. The one time, honestly, the past 10 fights we've seen Neal taken down was by Neil Magny, and successfully a game plan that Magny committed to, grinding him out, looking to grapple. And again, a path that I think Dos Anjos could look to take here, facing a guy that he knows he's going to have a disadvantage when it comes to just pure boxing or trying to match the speed of a guy like Geoff Neal. Neal's also someone who kind of sells a bit later in fights. When it gets there, when he's leading, you can see those leads sort of get more narrow. And, in the fights that he's behind, he sort of tends to, fade there in round three, quietly into the night. I think Dos Anjos is a fighter through and true, somebody who I've made money betting on plenty of times before. And just this matchup against Geoff Neal, I think he could take advantage of those, deficiencies in Neal's game. And while it's very likely that he's able to stuff those takedowns and put his hands on Dos Anjos for a majority of this bout, I think he does only need one or two or perhaps, three good takedowns secures this bout easily for Dos Anjos in my eyes. You mentioned the size. He's a welterweight now, man. I think while he certainly is smaller than Geoff Neal, it's not like those takedowns are going to come too hard. We've seen what he's able to do on top of guys like Brian Barberena and, big welterweights in the past. So Again, it's an underdog shot. I'm not super confident picking him, but I do like the value on Dos Anjos here this weekend.
Fair enough.
All right. Next, we'll take a look at two lightweights. Myktybek Orolbai, the minus 300 favorite, 320 favorite here against Mateusz Rebecki, who could be had at plus 250. Orolbai very impressive in his last appearance, both appearances in the UFC. That last fight, 7 minutes of control time against Elvis Brenner, really showing he's a capable offensive grappler. And even before that, I really liked what I saw out of the guy's hands as well. His boxing is solid. Facing a southpaw striker in Rebecki, I could see him get touched up a bit here early on the feet, but honestly, when it comes to striking exchanges, I think the length and an 8-inch reach advantage for Orolbai should play a huge factor there. When it comes to grappling, Rebecki honestly relies on grappling a pretty decent amount in his fights. Here being smaller, more stout than Orolbai, I think it'll be very difficult for him to secure his own offensive takedowns. He'll need to really work to get into top position on Orolbai and look to find grappling success there. So I think Orolbai is rightfully favored, that being all said. Minus 300 is a bit too rich for my blood, but yeah, Rebecki really hasn't shown much for me in regards to his hands or a significant submission threat to really take this fight from Orolbai, whether that be on the feet or on the mat. I think Orolbai should be able to control him for a large part of this one, stay on his back and keep safe for the most part.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think the line's a little bit wide, but at the same time, I do think Orolbai is certainly the rightful favorite here. I mean, Rebecki broke into the UFC, really impressive wins, but you kind of go back and look at them, and I mean, other than Loic Radzhabov, who I don't even rate that highly anyway, not really high level quality of opponent. I mean, Fiore cut, Roberts on the verge of being cut likely after another loss his last time out. Rebecki does land a lot of volume on the feet. He is pretty powerful for his frame, decent wrestler. But yeah, the cardio wasn't there his last time out against Carlos Diego Ferreira, which was obviously a considerable step up in competition for him here. Excuse me. Ferreira no longer ranked, I don't think, in the division, but he had been for years. I mean, just a really solid vet. We saw Rebecki come out strong, effective, was getting the wrestling going, but then he faded quickly, and obviously Ferreira took over from there, completely dominated him for the second and into the third round until he got that finish. Orolbai, I mean, might lose the first round here, but I don't necessarily think it matters. I mean, defensively sound enough on the feet that I don't think he's getting clocked. I mean, this guy looks like he's from prehistoric times. Imagine his chin is going to continue to hold up for a while. Don't see Rebecki finishing him on the feet. If he is able to take him down, I think Orolbai's grappling is more than quality enough to work his way back to his feet. And again, I think the cardio here is the big advantage that we have to give to Orolbai. So I like Orolbai. I think he gets it done probably via late finish or decision. Rebecki, though, coming off a fight where he gassed, maybe he's more tentative, keeps this close. And for that reason, I really don't want to be tying Orolbai into too many parlays. If this plays out close, goes to the cards, who knows which way it goes. Also, Rebecki does have finishing power early. So at the price, I'm not crazy about it, but I definitely think Orolbai is the rightful favorite, and he's going to be the pick for me here as well. 8-inch reach advantage on the feet here. So while Orolbai's striking isn't his strength, it does continue to improve. And I think with that reach, as long as he kind of puts the jab out, he should be able to mostly win at distance until he could take over as Rebecki starts to fade.
Yeah, and I think I took Elvis Brenner in the fight against Orolbai, but the odds were similar to this, and I just rate Brenner much higher than I would Rebecki. So minus 300 here, not a crazy price to lay, but yeah, I'm with you. Orolbai, rightful favorite, not necessarily getting the window with that one. We'll look now at a near even money matchup. Abus Magomedov, the very slight favorite here against Brunno Ferreira. This about at middleweight. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, man, this one's weird. I mean, for a middleweight fight, it almost feels like a heavyweight fight in some ways. Like these are two guys with tremendous power. We have a guy in Magomedov who we've seen gas at times. Ferreira certainly not known to have great cardio, so it's going to be kind of a car crash early. I do think Abus is the better technical striker. He's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage. Generally does a good job kind of mixing kicks into his combinations, but at the same time, we've seen Ferreira pull off upsets against the likes of Gregory Rodriguez and others in the past. Definitely has one-shot KO power. probably a power advantage over Abus here, but at the same time, I just don't know that we're necessarily going to see him lean on that. Magomedov, I mean, averaging 2.65 takedowns per 15 minutes, obviously gassed in that fight against Sean Strickland. His cardio's been kind of okay otherwise. I do think he could probably get his wrestling going here, and that's probably his clearest path to victory. Kind of slow Ferreira down, make this a little bit boring, pick him apart at range when this fight is on the feet. So I'm probably going to side with Abus here as the slight favorite, as the better technical fighter. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't terrified. I mean, Ferreira does have crazy power for the weight class, certainly capable of ending Abus's night early. So I'm on Magomedov, but it's a very low confidence play. I'd say proceed with some caution on this one.
Yeah, I am on the Magomedov side as well. If playing the Ferreira side, I would look at round one knockout as your prop. That's the way he's finished his, I think, past 5 wins, if not more than that now. It is worth noting the last two of them, Phil Hawes and Dustin Soltis. Not very high level competition. Phil Hawes probably the worst chin in the UFC. But yeah, it's not like Magomedov's necessarily established as like a level above those guys. So certainly would not surprise me to see Ferreira find that knockout for himself here. But I think Magomedov's striking, his length, as you had highlighted, should win out here in general as these two are exchanging on the feet. I also think Magomedov knows what he needs to do here. He thrived grappling in his last fight, executing 6 of 7 takedown attempts and accruing 12 minutes of control time in his last octagon appearance. I think if you're facing a significant power threat like Ferreira, you're absolutely going to take him down in round one. And yeah, if that works, you think Magomedov continues with that game plan throughout this fight. You take away a huge power threat. And while Ferreira has a couple chokes and things like that to his credit, he really is not a lethal jiu-jitsu practitioner. May try and hit a sweep or two to get up from underneath Magomedov if these two do end up grappling. But yeah, it's going to be Magomedov when these two are exchanging on the mat. And when it comes to striking on the feet, as long as he avoids that big knockout blow from Ferreira, I agree Magomedov should be the one to win here. All right, the best fight of the night will come next at heavyweight. This is a matchup between Kennedy Nzechukwu and Chris Barnett. A heavyweight fight. Kennedy minus 550, the favorite, against Barnett, who can be had at 4-1. What is this matchup? You have 6'5" Kennedy going up against Barnett, who is listed at 5'9". Barnett 2 years removed from competition, coming back now, having fights scheduled earlier this year that he was not able to fulfill. But I mean, this matchup coming together a bit of short notice. Kennedy stepping up, saying, "Yeah, I'll fight the guy," despite it being the first fight for Nzechukwu moving up to heavyweight, a lifelong light heavyweight, somebody who fits right in at 205 pounds, and now testing himself against a guy that's probably pushing 280, 290 on fight day. So we'll want to see how weigh-ins go for Barnett. You'll see the face-off. I'm sure our viewers can make their own educated decisions about this one. I think Barnett is very live. His ability to find spectacular knockouts against lower-level competition, and while Kennedy has proven to have all the technical skills in the world, he just doesn't put it together. We've seen him fall apart at times. We've seen him really struggle when opponents put pressure on him. It could be a position where Barnett's able to just crash the pocket, land heavy strikes. Kennedy stuck against the cage, trying to land any strikes, and just Barnett able to unload on him. The one thing, too, Barnett has the better cardio of these two. Perhaps Kennedy moving up in weight, we will see improved cardio. But if you ever see him in round 2 or round 3 of the fight, he is not moving the way he does in round 1. So, yeah, while it's going to be two plodding heavyweights and quite the spectacle for us to see, it very likely will be Kennedy using that length and picking apart Barnett from length, avoiding those big exchanges for as long as he can. I just think it's tough keeping a guy that size off you. So I'm tempted to go to the window and put a few bucks on Barnett here, but not entirely sure yet. You'll want to check out our write-up come Saturday for an official pick on this one.
Yeah, man, this one's funny. I mean, we go back to the days of Pride when Jose Canseco fought Choi. I mean, this is a freak fight. Before Barnett was in the UFC, he was fighting these freak fights for Rizin and other promotions out in Japan. The size on these guys is going to be comical. And Kennedy, like you said, probably more of a 205er, wants to move up because he hasn't been very successful down a weight class. I have to wonder why that is. I'm not necessarily sure. That loss against St. Peru, I mean, it just came because he really wasn't putting up volume, kind of afraid of an aging OSP's power, which is a little bit ridiculous. I don't think we're going to see that from him here, though. Definitely going to be physically imposing over Barnett. I don't think he's really going to be worried about the power coming back at him. When Kennedy's at his best, he's aggressive. We saw in the Roberson fight where he pursued grappling and found takedowns relatively easily. I think that's honestly his easiest path here. Barnett, 33% takedown defense. For a short kind of fire hydrant type of guy, pretty easy to take down. Kennedy has huge range on the feet, which is going to make it tough for Barnett to close distance on him. So yeah, I mean, just looking at this fight, Kennedy should win it. I will say at this price, I am a little bit hesitant to back him, just knowing how inconsistent this guy is. I mean, he could look like a world beater where he knocked out Alberg in Alberg's debut, or he can look absolutely terrible like he did last time out against OSP. I think he's taking this fight coming off 2 losses because he considers it one he can get back in the win column with, save his roster spot, etc. But yeah, I mean, Barnett, he is pretty durable, does have good cardio. If Kennedy kind of is over aggressive early or just kind of low volume, maybe this fight is closer than it should be. But yeah, I mean, you kind of have to bet Kennedy here. 6 years younger, 8-inch reach advantage, all the intangibles kind of in his favor. Barnett dealing with the aftermath of a hurricane, a few injuries, sicknesses, etc., loss in the family. I mean, this guy is so likable, so fun to watch. But at the same time, this is just a tough matchup for him, in my opinion. So I'm going to take Kennedy here. Don't love the price. Tough to back this guy given his general inconsistencies. But Chris Barnett is must-see TV, so definitely will be tuned in for this one.
Yeah, for sure. That's a fight you circle. Looking at this card for sure. We'll look now at a bantamweight matchup between Farid Basharat and Victor Hugo. Basharat minus 600, the favorite in the spot, against Hugo, who could be had at plus 450. Definitely like what I've seen out of Basharat since joining the promotion. He's 12-0 overall, undefeated professional. And right now, averaging 3.96 takedowns landed per fight, almost 4 takedowns landed per fight. That's more than 1 takedown per round in each of his appearances. He's becoming more accurate with his striking. I really like his ability to bob up and down, land his strikes from range, and then find his takedowns off of that. He's got good defensive awareness and generally tough for his size too. We've seen Basharat absorb a decent dose of strikes in the octagon thus far. He's been able to eat them, continue moving forward, and grind through for those takedowns. It's going to be the same game plan here for Basharat again today. Hugo is somebody who does his best work while boxing. I think Basharat is going to be looking to rinse and repeat with those takedowns here en route to an easy victory. Certainly Hugo is somebody who has power, for a bantamweight. When it comes to what he's able to do with his hands, I just find it hard for him getting separation here from Basharat for long enough to really let those hands go. Basharat too good with his kicks, good with while his opponents are at range, trying to disengage from those grappling exchanges, still able to effectively land significant strikes from distance. So certainly a big fan of the kid. I do not think Victor Hugo is going to give him his first career loss. But what say you?
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I mean, Hugo probably the more potent finisher here, but Basharat just super well-rounded. I mean, we've seen him in there against Lapalus, look really good. Clayton Rodriguez, who's been cut since, but pretty dangerous fighter, kind of similar to Hugo in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think Basharat has this one covered no matter where it goes. Going to be able to work behind his jab, really sound defensively on the feet, should be able to stay out of danger from Hugo, who does have some power. But yeah, on the mat as well. I mean, Hugo has decent BJJ, but Basharat averaging nearly 4 takedowns per 15 minutes. Yeah, man. I mean, I think he stays undefeated here, continues to kind of climb up the division, and Hugo feels like a bit of a step back, honestly. I mean, this guy is talented. He does have power, finishing potential, but really hasn't been in there against anyone near the level of Farid Basharat. So I'm here on Basharat, man, to stay undefeated.
Yeah, good parlay piece. And now we'll look at this middleweight matchup between Ismail Nordiev and Bruno Silva. Nordiev steaming to minus 170 now, the favorite here against Bruno Silva. It's an interesting matchup at middleweight, pretty low level, in my opinion. I categorize both these guys as pretty awful losers. I mean, Silva in his last several UFC performances, just no good. His last time out against Chris Weidman. Obviously, Chris Weidman is a guy that you should be getting past at this stage of your career. Weidman able to win that fight, but not without several controversial eye pokes en route to doing so. Not sure if that fight would be the same had those been, perhaps point deductions or scored a bit more appropriately. Silva's blinded in that fight. Here facing Nordiev, I think he does have the advantage as we see this fight play out late. Nordiev is somebody who's very technically sound early, very good striker, powerful striker. Certainly the skills to match up with a guy like Silva. And I think being placed on this card because he's, Russian born and the UFC previously thought very highly of him in his first stint. He was 2-2 with the promotion, but since he's been cut, fighting on Brave FC, winning, but also losing and not against very high level competition. 2 first-round losses, in the past several years for Nordiev. This is not a guy I want to back, especially as a betting favorite. And as bad as Bruno Silva is, he's consistently bad. You know what you're getting out of him. He's going to always be there. He's going to keep fighting. Able to get to a decision with Alex Ferreira. I don't think Nordiev is going to really be able to threaten him much in that early first round. And afterwards, it should be Silva's fight to take over. He's not generally the most threatening in rounds 2 and 3, but certainly what I've seen out of Nordiev's cardio issues, I can't back him here in this spot, especially as he seems to minus 180
Yeah, but
favorite.
I'm with you. I mean, Silva coming off 3 losses, it's kind of a wonder they haven't cut him yet. But yeah, I mean, fight Magomedov Allen, pretty decent level of competition. I mean, Silva lands more significant strikes per minute. He also absorbs a lot more. He's going to have to stay safe early. Nordiev, in most of his recent wins, finds that early finish. If he doesn't, he kind of takes his foot off the gas or gasses himself, and then he's there pretty much on a platter for his opponent. So I like the value on the underdog here. I think people are seeing the 3 losses, seeing the Weidman loss, and saying, how can you back this guy? And Nordiev definitely can have some fans in the stands with this being in Abu Dhabi. But at the same time, I mean, I just don't see how you don't back Silva. I mean, he's been facing a much better level of competition. Brave, decent promotion, but Nordiev is kind of like 500 there. 2 wins, 2 losses, hasn't looked that great over his last 4. Getting up there as well. I mean, not in age, but just in terms of damage and what he's been wearing in some of these fights. So I'm on Silva here. Again, not a fight I'm super confident in because this is low level. But I think as long as he stays safe early, he should be able to take over. Probably find a second round KO. That's probably going to be my outcome in terms of prediction. But I wouldn't be shocked to see Silva try to mix in a little bit of grappling as well. We saw it against Shara Bullet. Nordiev supposedly an okay grappler. I haven't really seen it on film though. So I'm going to take Silva here. Again, low level fight, proceed with some caution, but definitely value on him as the underdog.
All right, and the first fight to start out your morning, a welterweight matchup between Rinat Fakhretdinov and Carlos Leal. Fakhretdinov minus 550, the favorite in the spot against Leal, who could be had at 4-1. Fakhretdinov's looked very solid since joining the promotion. I'm not sure he certainly warrants, a price tag this high. As money has come in on him. He struggled late in his fights. He nearly lost his last time out against Nicholas Dalby. I wouldn't have been surprised had that decision gone the other way. But again, when you're looking at level of competition in a lot of these fights, and when it comes to Fakhretdinov, the guys he's faced so far in the octagon, while AL has faced very solid competition through 7 PFL fights, it's no one really on that caliber, and it's also nobody who really has threatened his grappling to the extent of Fakhretdinov. I mean, Ray Cooper perhaps won, but that was a fight that went Leal's way. Fakhretdinov, somebody who I think is going to look to take down over again. Leal, somebody who is a solid boxer and somebody who is going to be the more powerful striker in this matchup. While Fakhretdinov has become more comfortable in his hands, I am not. Doesn't see me as great power. And again, while his defensive awareness seems to be getting a bit better, I certainly feel more comfortable when he's engaging his opponents on the mat. He's averaging 1.48 takedowns landed per round. And yeah, I view him as the much more skilled grappler in this matchup. So I think he should be able to get the job done here against Leal, but a bit of a dicey one to open the card. While I'm comfortable laying minus 600 with Basharat, I'm not really going to be doing so here with Fakhretdinov to the same extent.
Yeah, I will say Leal. I mean, as far as debutants go, definitely better experience than most of these guys we see coming into the promotion, fighting with PFL, making his way through their Challenger series. He's been in there with the likes of Sadagusi, Ray Cooper, a few other pretty tough opponents, but he's looked good, man, and he's a good striker. But all that being said, I mean, Renat has faced good strikers in guys like Kevin Lee, Brian Battle, and he just takes them down. He takes them down again and again. I mean, he's averaging nearly 5 takedowns per 15 minutes. Leal definitely athletic. Maybe first or second shot's going to be something he'll be able to defend, but I think Renat's going to find those takedowns after a few attempts. And Lial is taking this fight on short notice. I don't know how prepared he was to step in here. But yeah, I mean, the price feels a little bit off just because Lial can definitely hang on the feet in this matchup. But I think the gap in the grappling is enough to justify him being a pretty considerable favorite. So I think Renat gets it done. Definitely going to need to mix in the wrestling. Leal live for the upset KO we've seen early in his career back with the PFL, but yeah, more skill, well-rounded fighter here. Renat Fakhretdinov, I expect, is able to get this done.
All right, awesome. Well, we appreciate everyone for tuning in for our breakdown of UFC 308 Topuria against Holloway. Be sure to buy the pay-per-view. Tune in this Saturday for the event from Etihad Arena. Again, note the 10 a.m. Eastern start time for this card. And be sure to check out our write-up as always on Saturday with our full breakdown and prediction for each of these fights. Nick, as always, I thank you for joining me. Enjoy the fights this weekend.
You too, man. Take care. Have a great night.